With Mike and his departure from the Titans, it seemed a little bit abrupt because I think as a fan base, Jackie McPherson with the Titans hat in the back, he's been a longtime Titans fan. A lot of people were saying like, "Oh, okay, we obviously have issues because we're not winning a whole lot of games, but Mike's not the problem." And then shortly after the season end, Mike is gone. How was that transition for y'all? How those discussions, for what you can say?
I'd say it was tough. That day was really tough. I'll speak personally. It was one of those, and this is just being full transparent. When it happened, I called my wife and I was like, "Hey, like this just happened." And the first thing my wife says is, "You need to call Rhea," which is my daughter. And I'm like, "Why?" She was like, "Because she doesn't need to hear that coach got fired from one of the kids in school, because my kids don't have social media." And so my daughter had a really close relationship with Mike. And if you look on her screensaver on her phone right now, it's a picture of her and Mike, and that hasn't changed. And so, not only to have that happen to him, but to now I got to communicate this to my daughter, and then to have he's now 7-year-old son who he thinks he's the GM and the owner and the head coach. He legitimately, when he got out of school, my wife told him, and he was like, "What are you doing?" Like, my son said this to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was tough. It was tough. And then to, go out and, again, I'm not on social media, but you can feel heat. You know what I mean? You can feel heat. And I knew what it was, but I also knew that it was, unfortunate that it happened. And again, listen, Mike will be coaching in no time. He'll be back on the sideline in no time, and he's going to do well wherever he goes because that's just in his DNA and who he is. But, I knew after that happened, it was no time to sit back and sulk and, lick your wounds. It was like, we have to deliver the next guy, and it was, man, for that happened on a Tuesday. And literally you work through Tuesday night, putting a list together. And mind you, I've never interviewed a head coach before. You know what I mean? So then now
uncharted waters.
Yeah. And so now it's like you spend Tuesday identifying a list, right? And that's a lot of conversations with a lot of people. You do that until Wednesday, then you get the request out to the clubs because it's that time of year. Everybody's trying to interview. And then you spend all day Wednesday, all night Wednesday, all through Thursday, putting the structure and the interview together. Also scheduling interviews, and then boom, Friday you have your first interview. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so oddly enough, Cali was our first interview. And so you try to, for me personally, I was like, we need to be ahead of the curve, when it comes to it. We need to be ahead of the whole hiring cycle because there were so many jobs open. And we were like, you don't want to get behind in this phase. And so we were very detailed. And, we took a really good approach to it. However, it was pretty clear, once we sat with Cali that he was the guy.
I got a 2-part question. As you were experiencing the interview process for the first time, what do you feel like ended up being the most important question in the interview? And then the second question is, what jumped out about Cali that was like, we can't really let him hypothetically leave the building?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me, and again, I've been around Vrabes, I've been around Kyle Shanahan, I've been around Jeff Fisher, been around Sean McVay. These guys are excellent at situational football, just overall, just situations of the game. And so it was talking about concepts like that, in the interview, but then you follow it up with, who's your coaching staff? Who's your coaching staff going to be? And again, anybody can come in and say, I'm going to hire Vince Lombardi to be my head coach. Bill Belichick's going to be the D coordinator, and Bill Walsh is going to be my offensive coordinator. But who can you really deliver? And the one thing that stood out with Cali was he had a depth chart of coaches. And I'm not saying when I say a depth chart, and he literally had a 3 deep. But it wasn't just like, all right, I want this guy, and if I can't get this guy, then this guy's the backup, and if I can't get him, then this. No. He had, these are 3 tier 1, here's 3 tier 2, here's 3 tier 3. And he had that for every single position. And so you knew looking at that, like, this guy's put a lot of thought process into this, you know, and he's well thought out, he's well researched. And I can say, because I was looking at it the other day, like, we legitimately got number 1 on every one of his positions.
Damn.
He had his old man.
He did not. He did not have his old man on the list. He was, and I told in the interview, I was like, "Hey, man, elephant in the room. What's up with Pops?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Are we trying to?" He was like, "Hey, man, honestly, we haven't had the conversation." He said we talked about it briefly last year, and just ultimately decided that it wasn't the best thing. And he was like, "We haven't had the conversation."
Man, it perfectly aligns with what he said, because he had said the same thing. Like, when the opportunity might have come up last year, his dad was essentially like, no. Yeah. And then after, when he gets this job, his dad calls him and goes, "I'll think about it," without even any context.
Yeah.
He just is like, "Yeah, I'll think about it."
I'll be honest with you. Because I call Bill, I call him Big Coach. I've asked Big Coach, you know, I was like, was it ever a thing? Because I know from my dad always wanted to coach me. And my dad ended up being my position coach in Dallas, and that lasted 2 weeks. You know, and it was like, this is not gonna work. Right. It's just, and it didn't work. Shit. But you know, he was like, he said, Bill told me, he said, it wasn't until I watched his press conference that I really started thinking about it.
Really?
Yeah, he said it wasn't until he watched the press conference.
It seemed his press conference was a little bit emotional when he started talking about his wife and everything. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, and like I said, this, and you know, when you guys come around, like, this coaching staff is. It's something, man. Like, the defensive staff, they're their own people, and our offensive staff, and just, you know, just to be through the building and the energy and the juice, you know, that's in the building, and it's just been cool. And again, I know some of these guys because I've worked with them, and a lot of guys I don't know, but I mean, we're a couple months in, and it feels like I've known these dudes forever. Yeah.
You feel like that's been one of the bigger differences, is the juice and energy with the staff and in the building?
Well, I say this. I know when Callie was putting his staff together, and a cool, you know, thing that he afforded me was, he was like, "Hey, man, like, I don't want to just hire people, right? Just hire my buddies." He was like, "I want you to feel good about the coaches that I want." He was like, "So let's interview them." And he was like, "And I want you in the interview to, you know, ask as many questions, you know." And so everybody that we brought in, like, I was a part of interviewing them and getting to know them. And so you feel that. But the one thing that Callie talks about a lot is connectiveness. And he was like, and our staff, we have to be the example of that for our locker room. You know what I mean? And so those guys are always together, never not together. You know, and like I said, it's just a cool group of dudes, and it's competitive. It's competitive as hell. We even have like a 4:30 workout group with our strength coach, and it's like anywhere from 10 to 12 of us at 4:30. And listen, when I'm out there, it looks pitiful. You know what I mean? Like, running hundreds and, you know, all these things, but it's another way for us to connect, you know, and build together. And I think the players see it, you know, and feel like, hey, man, these dudes are really together and they're not just talking.
Yeah, it's sick to see that you guys are aligned, because it seems like that's always like a main thing of the downfall of a program, whether it's college or NFL. Like, the AD and the head coach don't get along, that falls apart, and then inevitably both of them are gone.
Yeah.
And with you and Callie, it just seems like, just hearing you guys both talk, so like, because we've shot these episodes within 2 days, hearing you guys both talk, you seem so aligned on the vision and what you guys want to do, but it took a lot to get there. You look at the end of this past season, and you're looking at a pretty destroyed roster. The King leaves. Yeah. You know, you're missing a lot of pieces, and it's essentially like an Everest to build up. And now we're sitting in the middle of May, and the Titans are in the best position in the world, because you look at the power rankings of the NFL, and everyone thinks you guys are shit. But if I were to read you a list of your roster, and you'd say, is this team going to be good or bad? Just talent alone, it's like, these boys can cook a little bit. They got something cooking over there. So truly the best position you can possibly be in May before the coming up football season. Like, when you were looking at this big project going into 2024, like, where was the starting point for y'all?
I mean, honestly, the starting point, it didn't start when Cali got here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because the free agency part, it was the front end of the work was done in December.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with the staff that we have, and so when Cali came, obviously scheme changes. So some players are shifted and moved. Like, okay, this guy fits better, you know, now, and so that's the adjustment. The cool thing that him and his staff did when they came in, we all met all our scouts, and we're lucky because all of our college scouts live here in town, and so we had our whole staff and a whole coaching staff, and then they showed us. They put highlight tapes together, positional profiles. Hey, look, I want my left tackle to look like this height, this weight, this arm length, this speed. Here are the traits that we're looking for with examples, right? And so now, you know, we get to see it. We get to see the visual. Okay, we know what they're looking for in each one of these positions on the team, and it makes it easier for us to go hunt and go find it. So that makes our job easier. But just even looking at it, it's like, you know, obviously to, you know, lose a player like Derek, like that was the number one question I got the most when I was around town. Like, hey, better not let Derek leave, or what's going on with Derek. Like, I understand the magnitude of that, because in my mind, you know, prior to coming here, when you thought about the Tennessee Titans, you thought about Mike Vrabel, you thought about Derrick Henry,
Taylor Lewan,
you know, and Taylor Lewan, you know what I mean, and so cornerstone, you know what I mean, cornerstone piece.
Busting with the boys,
right? Yeah, busting with the boys. Chargers, Chargers get a shout out in the schedule.
And so, you know, that's these guys are identifying factors for this football team and the way the football team played, and so you want to keep some of that, but then it's like, all right, how are we going to build this in Cali's image, and what is it going to take for his scheme? And so you have to make the tough decisions, you know what I mean, and you have to be aligned, you know, in those decisions. And so we start piecing it together, and then again, you hear me talk about it a lot, is relationships. You know, I mean, if you look at our free agency class, there are relationships all along the way. You get a Calvin Ridley because you have a relationship, you know, or I'm not even gonna say we had a relationship. We created one, you know, out of thin air, and being able to just be relatable is what got him here. You know, Cheeto Bay, he was with Cali for how many years in Cincinnati, so he kind of knows what the program is going to be. You know, Tony Pollard, he's from Memphis, you know, wanted the opportunity to raise his kids, you know, at home, you know, where he grew up, gives you a leg up. You know, all these things, you know, come into play. And like I said, this city and this state it's like you said, it's slept on. You know, it's slept on. I've never been anywhere in the National Football League where all your scouts lived in the town. Like, that's a 100% competitive advantage. And then think about just historically, you weren't drafted here, but where do you live now?
Nashville.
Every player that comes here, whether they were drafted here, signed a long-term deal or a one-year deal, they come here and they stay.
Yeah.
And so
it's a weird
you see a lot of the tight ends too in the offseason, like Kittle on them, like people.
Everybody comes here. So it's a competitive advantage. And we just put ourselves in position to take advantage of that. You know what I mean? And like you said, when we were walking up to the bus, like, it's like an unwritten thing with this city, you know, and we'll say higher profile people, like, those people feel comfortable here. The people in the city show you love, but they respect your space.
Yeah.
And so everybody here, you feel a part of the community. I'm leaving my daughter's flag football game a couple weeks ago, and I looked at my wife and I was like, of all the places we've ever lived, like, I feel a part of the community here. When I'm at her games, my standing with the team, none of that matters. I'm just one of the crazy dads in the stands giving the refs hell. You know what I mean? And like, I don't have to wear Titans GM hat.
Yeah.
I'm just Rhea's dad, you know, at the game, and I'm cheering. Like, my daughter's team, they won the championship for the third year in a row for a girls flag, and I'm standing on the top of the stand screaming 3-peat and got the crowd going. And you know what I mean? Like, my daughter hurt her back in one of the tournament games. I'm down there stretching her out, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just being a dad. And I
Yeah.
think this city is what allows that to happen. Like, I don't have to always feel on,
Right.
if you will. I could just be one of the people. And that is a true competitive advantage about being here.
When you look at, you brought up Calvin Ridley. And I think when I think of Calvin Ridley, obviously he's a great, awesome talent and wrongly accused for gambling as well. But that's a different story.
Calvin Ridley.
He goes from the Jags to here. And during his press conference, he's like, honestly, I want to stay with the Jaguars. Is you see that as a pro or a con when hearing that statement? Because to me, it's like, now you know 2 times a year he's got those games circled, because you can, in your delusional football mind that we've all had, use that as, oh, they didn't want me, when maybe the number was just a little too big.
No, I'll be perfectly honest with you. Everything was comparable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he had the option to go back. Whether the number was, I'm good. Appreciate the offer though. Being hospitable,
I got you.
Southern hospitality. He had the option to go wherever he wanted to go. But I think it's more of a positive in that we made him comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coming here, and then the lesser known of the deal was, again, here, Nashville, Tennessee. His wife's family's from Huntsville.
I didn't know that.
Right down the road. You know, makes it an easy transition for her to still be now you're closer to your family, you know.
Yeah.
And so it, again, competitive advantage being here in Nashville.